Hello, it's Sarah from Hardcover Hearts. Welcome to 2021. We survived 2020. I am very, very happy to be letting go of 2020 and looking forward into 2021. And I'm here with my week of reading wrap-up. This is where I talk about the books that I read last week, what I'm currently reading, and then potentially could read next week based on my mood. I had a phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal reading week. And if you've been watching my channel for the kind of best of year wrap up, you just need to know that I can't do those until I literally finish. I was reading the very last book up until the end, across the finish line into 2021. And I like to sit and think a little bit about which ones resonated with me. Now, I read an incredible amount this year. I think my final number was 192 books. And so with that kind of number, I really want to divvy it up because as you know, I also read a lot of more than just literary fiction. I read a lot of genre, mysteries, I read nonfiction, all sorts of different things. And I would like to contextualize it a little bit. So keep on the lookout for that. That will be coming shortly. But let's talk about the finish of the year and what I read this weekend so far. So starting up first with Luster. Oh, the hype is real with this one. Expect to see this in the BookTube prize for next year. If there's still time, FYI, if you have been interested in being a judge for the BookTube prize, there is still time. So I'll put a link below to BookTube prize channel. So yes, I expect this will be a heavy contender there. Okay, how do I want to talk about this book? This book is a searing, excruciating, painful, uncomfortable look at one woman's experience. She's a young woman, a young Black woman, who has no safety nets whatsoever. She doesn't have family. She doesn't have friends. She doesn't have savings. She is hanging on by a thread, and that thread snaps. That thread snaps at the same time that she has started a sexual relationship with a married man who is in an open marriage. You would think that this book would focus on the relationship between Edie, our protagonist, and Eric, the man. But that's not what happens. The interesting dynamics, the most revelatory and deep ones, occur between the women in Eric's life. His wife, Rebecca, and their adopted daughter, Akila. Akila is a Black girl, and she is struggling. She's struggling. I don't want to spoil too much of this book because it's very slim and it's a fast read. But just know that the dynamics and the relationships between these women and how they come together and how they compare and contrast and what they serve for each other, to me, was the power of this book. And if you watch my channel, you know I love complicated women relationships. You're hearing a lot of conversation about how this is a kind of more grown-up version of Queenie. I liked Queenie very much. Queenie by Candace Carty Williams. This also was in the BookTube prize this last year. But I think that Queenie had that safety net. She had friends, she had family, she had something to kind of help prop her up when things got really dark and really dire, in a way that Edie does not have. I found this incredible, and the writing is really, really focused, a little poetic, but sharp, biting. It's a lot. I had to sit. I was still feeling it after I finished it. Remarkable piece of work right here. Okay, so the next up, I finished This was a buddy read with Charles Heathcote. I'll put a link to his channel below as well. This is Utopia Avenue by David Mitchell. Now, this is my very first David Mitchell that I've ever done, and Charlie loves David Mitchell, so I thought it was such a great opportunity to buddy read with him. So for our first buddy read. Now, ironically, I thought that he was going to add more value than I would be able to the conversation. But this was kind of in my wheelhouse. I think I've mentioned it before, but I was a guitar tech for a band for a European tour, and have just known many people in the music business and in specifically in the punk scene. So while this is not the punk scene, this is set in the 60s. And it's really kind of this band getting created, and then in the swirl of everything that was happening with the Rolling Stones and the Beatles and the Who and Pink Floyd, all of those things happening in London. Part of me kept saying, like, well, how exciting can this be? This is going to be your typical band gets together, band breaks up, harmony, disharmony kind of storyline. But every time I came back to this book, it just made me feel cozy and comforted, and I just was in good hands. He creates incredibly realistic characters, and he goes in directions that were not expected. Now, it wasn't until the very last third of this book that the David Mitchell magic actually occurred. And that is where kind of the esoteric, philosophical, metaphysical experience really came into play. But up until then, it had been what felt like a very straightforward, well-crafted story. And then where it really took off for me is then the band goes to America. And once we get to America, we go to so many landscapes that I know intimately. We went to New York City, and you have really great cameos sprinkled throughout the entire book. Just really fun, interesting, little quirky cameos with like John Lennon and Janis Joplin and Jerry Garcia. From New York, then they go to sunny LA, and they spend time in Laurel Canyon, and all sorts of things happen there. And then they arrive in San Francisco, and this is right after the Summer of Love. And this is obviously a place and a history that I know very intimately. David Mitchell really got San Francisco right. And so for me, it was such a wonderful treat to know that Charlie, who has not visited San Francisco or America, was reading about San Francisco from a vantage point that was real. How he describes Haight Street, how he describes Golden Gate Park, how he describes just the city in general was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. And I will tell you, was the moment that as we're starting walking into the ending, I knew what was going to happen because of how well he played with place. So this was such a treat. It was such a lovely surprise. I thought it was going to be difficult. I thought it was going to be really esoteric and really out there, and it wasn't. It was incredibly crafted, well-crafted, great story. I finished the Mitfords, the letters between six sisters. I did an entire video about that. I'll put a link to that below, and where I just kind of rave about how amazing that book was. I was so bereft at not having kind of their language in my head that I decided to pick up Wigs on the Green by Nancy Mitford. This is a really lovely cover, by the way. This is her send-up of the fashion of following fascists. So she's really teasing her sisters, both Diana and Unity, and also really pointing fingers and taunting Sir Oswald Mosley, who would become Diana's husband. This was written in 1934, and it's just, it's not a monumental work, but when you know the history and you know how much it got under their craw that this was written and it was out there, and it's really a romp, which it talks about how the bored peerage just sit around and they're looking for things and things to hold on to and causes to have, and how ridiculous it all is and how absolutely silly they look. It's really, really satirical and silly and fun and funny. I enjoyed it very much. I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it if I didn't know the backstory behind it. So this would be great if you're a completist and you want to read all of Nancy's work. Next up was something I completed for Cloak and Dagger Christmas. This is Dying in the Wool, a Kate Shackleton mystery by Frances Brody. So I've seen these Frances Brodys everywhere. Standard fare, cozy mystery. I think it's aspiring to be kind of Dorothy Elsa or Agatha Christie-ish, kind of evoking that golden age of mysteries. And it absolutely does. It does pull on those strings. Our story here is that we have Kate Shackleton, who has helped someone find a missing person in the past. And because of that, her friend who's going to get married asks her to help find her presumed dead father. She believes very strongly that her father is still alive and that something happened, and they just need to figure out what happened and where he is. And so with that, Kate comes to kind of help with the wedding and in essence start an investigation. What I like about this character, Kate Shackleton, is that she recognizes her errors and she's an amateur trying to be more professional, trying to establish herself through the help of her father, who used to be a cop. And so he's kind of given her somebody as her first employee who's been helping her. And so she's kind of stumbling into this. And so I appreciate her humility as she's going through this. But at the same time, it is standard fare for this kind of book. It's the first in the series, so maybe it'll get more interesting as we go. I'll probably give it a listen if I see it in the library, but I don't think I'm going to go seeking out the next in the series. Okay, but let me tell you about a book that I just adored. So this is The White Mirror by Elsa Hart. This is number 2 of the Li Du series. This is set in 1700s in China. And the region that Li Du is wandering through in this traveling caravan, he's on his way to Lhasa. And he is a exiled librarian, court librarian. This kind of period in time, as well as this place in time, place in the region is so interesting because you've got this combination of cultures that are clashing. They're appearing to be working together, but are they really working together or aren't they? They're trying to get to Lhasa, and there's a home that they can stay when they arrive. So there's going to be a storm coming. So as they're arriving, they see a bridge and they see a man sitting, looks like meditation on the bridge. It looks like he's a monk from the distance. As they get up closer, he's not moving. So they see that it looks like he has died by suicide. And there is a painting of a white mirror on his chest. So while they're stuck there during this storm, Li Du wants to figure out what happened to this monk. Elsa Hart has seemed to have done a ton of research. And you know that I usually don't like people who don't live in the area taking on voices of characters who live there. I like own voices. But this feels like it's been well respected and well received. So I'm keeping my eyes out. I will read the next one, City of Ink, and I'm looking forward to it very much. But this was remarkable, one of the best of the year. There's a little teaser for you. Let's see, what else did I read? Oh, I settled in, got a cup of tea, and just enjoyed reading and finishing Memoirs of a Dutiful Daughter by Simone de Beauvoir. Now, I do not know, it's not listed who the translator for my edition was. I read it on my Kindle. Okay, I think I have a new obsession now. So add to our Anita Bruckner, add to Virginia Woolf. These are the luminaries, the heavyweights, the pillars of feminist literary tradition and canon. And I'm both upset that I waited so long to read her, but I also understand because I needed the time. I needed to grow up. I think I needed to have more books under my belt. to be able to really weigh and understand what I was reading. So while it took me a long time to get here, I am so happy to be here. This book was remarkable. It was absolutely remarkable. So much about what I've learned about her is her diligence and her willingness to just put in the work, and her forcedness in not letting people tell her what she needed to be. She is struggling against her parents. Her parents have a specific way they want her to be. They want her to get married. They want her to live a normal life. And she wants to be a philosopher. She wants to be an academic. She wants to live a life of the mind. So she has a cousin that she's very, very close with. And she thinks she loves him. She doesn't love him. She thinks she loves him. She doesn't love him. It reminds me very much of Marcel Proust and his conversations with himself about Joubert. And even though she likes this man, he makes her laugh, she enjoys his company, she's not sexually charged by him. And so it creates this chasm where she just doesn't know what she thinks. And she's so naive and so innocent, and she does not have many friends. And so a lot of it goes into her writing. Meanwhile, she has a best friend, Zaza, one very, very close friend, but that friendship kind of is like a rubber band, and it snaps sometimes, and it pulls together, and it pulls apart. And a lot of the pulling apart is because Zaza is such a good daughter, and it's much harder for her to rebel against her family than it is for Simone. And we see all the ways that this manifests. It's such an interesting way of her talking about her friendship and showing her what her friend is doing and what she's doing. And so you have a compare and contrast of these two women that both want similar things, but are compelled in different ways to act in French society. This was published in 1958. But we really go up through the time when she graduates and first meets Sartre. So fascinating childhood. I am absolutely moving forward and going to read her next memoir. I think there's a trilogy, so I'll be reading the next one. I think it's called The Prime of Life. And Amy from the Dusty Bookshelf is also doing a really deep dive into Simone de Beauvoir. So I will be keeping a very close track on what's going on there. Two more things. I know this is getting very long. So I did a cursory read in French, of 84 Charing Cross Road on New Year's Day. This was my annual tradition. This is the book that I start with, and I invited many people to join me this year and was so delighted with all the people who posted pictures and joined us for this event. I will be reading the French version again next year. This is something that I think I'm going to be continuing on until I can read this and grasp on its own without having to refer. I didn't refer to the English version as I was reading it. And some things, there would be chunks where I actually completely understood all on my own, and I felt so good. But I have a very, very long way to go with this. And then lastly, as I was doing my review of the books that I've read, I recognized that I did not do a good job last year on works in translation or small press. Works in translation is crucially important to really understand a worldview, to get own voices, perspectives on what's happening in the world. And small presses are the way that we access those books, and also books that are a little off the mainstream, that are kind of things that I'm interested in. I need to rectify that for 2021. And luckily, Invisible Cities Project has come to my rescue. I'm going to be able to do both in one fell swoop. So I'm going to put a link below to some of their content. There are many hosts with this. There is a Discord platform set up for this. There are hashtags and social media. They're everywhere. It's being held by, I first heard about it because of Natalie at Curious Reader. Hi, Natalie. And some of the other people are Yamini, Stephanie, Agnes, Nicole, Michael, and Will. I'll put a link to all of the hosts and their channels below so that you can check them out. What they're doing is so smart. They're choosing, each month they choose 3 countries. And what they try to do is identify different books of works in translation for that country, as well as recipe films you can watch, well as music. And so it's this really lovely curated experience. The first 3 countries are Morocco, Japan, and Argentina. Just so happened that I had a book that I've been waiting to read for Morocco, and that is Leila Slimani's Sex and Lies. Leila Slimani, you may know, she wrote The Nanny, she wrote Adele. She is a Moroccan-born writer. She writes in French. This is translated by Stephanie Lewis. Once she started getting published for works that are pretty provocative, then Moroccan women wanted to talk to her about sex because it's so taboo in Moroccan culture. And so she ended up writing this book where she is talking about the times when she meets with these women individually, what their backstory is, why they're wanting to talk to her, and then helps them tell their story. She provides us the statistics, she provides us the voiceovers and the context so that we understand how we're able to take these and not just have these as individual anecdotes, but be able to see a pattern. My only criticism with this book is there is only one lesbian story in here. And I just feel like that's a missed opportunity. Now, of course, she only gets to tell the stories of those who are coming to speak with her. And it is dangerous for a lot of these women to do so. So I respect that. This is very different than Three Women by Lisa Taddeo. If you want to know my complaints about that book, I'll put a link to that video below as well. But I thought this was very, very well done. Gave me a lot of insight into the state of Moroccan feminism and the state of women and sexual freedom in Morocco today. So highly recommended. Okay, so let me show you what I'm actually currently reading and about to start. So of course, continuing with Marcel Proust, In Search of Lost Time, Volume 2, In the Shadow of Young Girls in Flower. That name always just takes so long for me to get out. So continuing that with Leo of A Little Book Life. Then I am also continuing on with the Invisible Cities project. I saw this in my library, took it out, and then saw Bert from Past Story Time was reading it he posted on Instagram. So I feel like I picked the right book. This is The Hojin Murders, and this is written by Seishi Yokimizo and translated by Louise Heel Kawai. This is a kind of your typical locked room kind of mystery, and I'm really liking how it's playing with form. So enjoying it so far very, very much. And then from Argentina, I found on Scribd Slum Virgin, which I've wanted to read, and this is by Gabriela Cabezon Camara and translated by Frances Riddle. So really looking forward to getting into this, and it's a slim version. And she also wrote a book that was just up for, I think it was in the long list for the Booker International, and that was called The Adventures of China Iron. So if I get on with Slim Virgin, that might be something that I try to add this month as well. But this project just delights me to no end and really sparks a lot of interest in me. So I'm quite excited. And as you can see, I'm barreling into the new year with a ton of great reads. I would love to know, have you read any of these? What are your thoughts? Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Please remember, we are still in a global pandemic. If you have to go outside, please maintain safe social distance, wear your mask, wash your hands, and do not touch your face. Thank you for watching. I'll see you soon. Bye.